Let's bring in Brad Hallbrick. Brad, thanks for coming on the program. You happen to be in the area, which made it really super convenient for you to pop over to the studio. What were you up here for?
Yeah, well, thanks, Jeannie. It's great to be back. And so I was in Chicago, downtown. The Illinois Farm Bureau's annual meeting meets the first weekend of December every year. It's been consistently held in the Palmer House for the last several years. And so today was a big day. They have district-wide meetings. And so district directors are elected every 5 years, I think. And so they caucus multiple district meetings throughout the afternoon. And so as legislators, it's a great time for us to come up, meet with our constituent, our farmer friends from all across the districts and all across the state of Illinois. Something over 1,600 people were registered to be. So it's a big event, and so it's a great opportunity to be out and about with all of those farmers and anybody involved in agriculture.
Were y'all packing since you came to Chicago from down south?
We might want to ask another question.
Okay. All right. I'll ask you another question.
But anyhow, this is really, Jeannie, this agriculture thing, coming to Chicago, it's a big deal. Okay. And so agriculture is big in the state of Illinois. 1 in 4 jobs is somehow connected to agriculture.
75% of the land in Illinois is farmland.
Right. Mm-hmm. So it's, it's like, well, why would farmers want to come and meet in Chicago? Well, that's a great place to meet. So why not? And they've got the facilities to handle them. But, you just have your usual stuff with parking and all the rest of that stuff, but everybody manages through it. So anyhow, that's why I'm in Chicago today, being a part of that, and it was great to be here. And so on the way home, I thought I'd stop by and say hi.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have you here because there's a lot of things that farmers deal with that maybe we don't deal with in the suburbs, but are still very, very important. And one of those is property rights.
Right. So property rights is a big deal. Eminent domain is a big deal, and the reason why these are really important issues is because of the expansion of the green energy stuff, the solar, the wind farms, the network of electrical lines, power lines, high voltage power lines that crisscross the country. They're coming across farm fields all across the state, and mostly in central Illinois is affected. The Siege bill that passed 2 years ago has basically given eminent domain to a private company to cut across 9 counties.
Now I'm sorry, but can you imagine that, suburban voters? Can you imagine that, I don't know, let's just say ComEd comes in and says, hey, we're putting up a transmission line. It's going through your backyard, and you can't do anything about it. Because that's essentially what you're facing as farmers downstate.
Right. This is really bad policy, and it affects a lot of the modern farming methods. Equipment is getting rather large, rather wide. It's electronic guided, the GPS, a lot of electronic controls, so they're concerned about the interference that these high-voltage power lines may have on the equipment. Plus, we use still a fair amount of aerial applications, and so they're trying to fly planes, helicopters in and amongst the power lines, in and amongst the wind towers, or some folks might want to call them giant sky blenders. And so anyhow, it just continues to pose challenges. It's like, are we going to have food policy in this state, or are we going to have energy policy? We're going to have to decide what it is we want here in the state of Illinois.
Well, actually, we can have both if people would be reasonable, but that's not what's happening. It's not happening at the federal level. It's not happening at the state level. Speaking of the federal level, and let's go back to the COP28 conference, which is that climate conference that, John Kerry's at right now. Apparently, according to this Epoch Times article I just read this morning, the Biden administration signs a new climate pact to shut down all U.S. coal plants. And there's John Kerry, special presidential envoy on climate matters. He announced Saturday that the United States has proudly committed to not build any new coal plants and to get rid of existing ones entirely. To meet our goal of 100% carbon pollution-free electricity by 2035, we need to phase out unabated coal, he's announced. And so the U.S. has joined a coalition of 56 other countries who all plan to ditch coal in the name of climate change. Now, this is insanity. Mm-hmm. This is not going to work. This is all pandering to the radical masses because when push comes to shove, they're going to want to power their lives as well. And the only way that's going to happen, even by 2035, which is only 11 years away, basically, the only way that's going to happen is if we continue to have fossil fuels. So you turned me on to the MISO app, and then I found out that there's a PJM Now app, and these are two apps where you can actually find out where your electricity is coming from, depending on where you are in the United States, where you are in the United States, but actually in Illinois specifically. I mean, you could, in northern Illinois, you're going to be looking at the PJM Now app. In MISO territory down, the rest of the state is pretty much MISO. Right. And I looked at it this morning, and thank you so much for bringing up that app because I share it with everybody. Everybody, go ahead, go to your Play Store, download the MISO app. It's just incredible. So I downloaded that MISO app this morning, and sure enough, what did I find out? In your territory, this morning, 34% of the electricity going to the grid was being generated by coal.
Right.
And then another, I think it was 35% was generated by natural gas, and another, I don't remember how much was nuclear. But guess how much solar was contributing to the electrical grid this morning?
Probably zero.
That's right.
Yeah, because it's consistently zero.
Zero.
I mean, it lists coal, natural gas, nuclear, wind and solar, and other. And other, every time I look at it, other has more production than solar does.
Well, that's a hamster on the wheel. So this is a joke. And then if you live up in our area, okay, sure, coal was only 14%. Natural gas, was 41%. Nuclear was 40%. But again, solar was zero. So this is all a charade because they're not going to give up their energy sources either. They're just pandering to the masses. Right. It's very frustrating.
Right. Well, our economy was based on coal and then more recently oil. I mean, under every square foot of Illinois land is coal. Now, it may be at varying depths and various thicknesses once you find it there, but southern Illinois and central Illinois is just loaded up with coal reserves. And it's a shame that we're not utilizing this valuable natural resource. There's all kinds of methods to clean it up. The coal plant that we toured 2 years ago in southwestern Illinois, one of the cleanest coal plants in the nation and the world.
Powers Naperville. Powers all in Naperville
250,000 homes.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to prematurely shut that down because it uses coal. One of the most efficient uses are fossil.
I mean, Pritzker can pretend and do anything all he wants, but the bottom line is all you're going to do is generate coal energy in other states and push it to the grid, and it's going to come over to Illinois. Mm-hmm. So stop kidding yourself. I will say, Germany's already gone through this entire experiment, and they're bringing coal plants back online. Right. And Wall Street Journal just had a really incredible article. Germany gets honest about what net zero will cost. Well, guess what? They can't afford it. Right. They can't afford it. They can't afford net zero, and industry is leaving. That's what happens. It's going to migrate to other countries if you can't provide energy that's both affordable and consistent. And there's nothing consistent about wind or solar.
Correct.
So this is a total joke.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so, wow, that first segment went really fast, but I want you to hold on, audience, because we have a really important topic to discuss after this commercial break, and that's about the the Illinois Supreme Court justices and the corrupt way they got elected.
Now, more of The Real Story with your host, Jeanne Ives.
How about that? You like my Christmas cheer bumper music?
It was worth the trip to hear that.
Yeah, no, I like it. I asked for it, so thank you to my producer for putting that together. I appreciate it. Hey, listen, Brad. So one of the most important things that I thought was important as a legislator to be able to do is to actually get answers from departments because you're an official. You have access in a way that other regular people don't. We can FOIA all day long, but if we want real information, you have access through Republican staff. They can ask department heads, or you can go directly to department heads and ask them information. So it was really encouraging. A couple weeks ago, Pritzker makes this big announcement. He's sending another $160 million for migrant care, illegal alien care, to Chicago. And you said, well, what's the whole tally here? Right. And you had staff come up with a number, and what did you find out?
Yeah, I think it was they pegged it at $708 million. Okay, and that was just kind of on first blush from the health care, or not the health care. That's in addition to the health care.
Yeah, that's in addition to the non-citizen health care, which is going to be $831 million.
Housing, this is clothing, this is food, this is the tents, I guess, all this kind of stuff. Well, housing, tents, but yeah, it's just the list goes on. And this is we're just getting started.
Yeah, I know. But nobody was forthcoming about these numbers. It's not like the Democrats told you. It's not, you had to ask for it. They don't just give you this info.
Right. And we touched about this the other day, is this isn't like new money. This money's already been appropriated to other agencies.
That's right.
And the governor has the ability to move 4% from line to line. But in the BIMP bill, the Budget Implementation Plan, last spring, they doubled that amount to 8%. So the governor can now have access to move 8% of appropriated funds to whatever he wants to do. So he's doing this, right? This stuff was already appropriated back in May, and now he's going to come back in the spring and ask for $1 billion, I guess, to backfill.
So 8% of a $50 billion budget, you're talking about $4 billion that he can move out of areas where you or as a legislative body said, here's where we want to spend our money.
Right.
But now he's got the freedom to move about $4 billion, double the amount that he normally would.
Right. And nobody talked about that throughout the spring and throughout the summer. And nobody talked about that until we figured that out 2 or 3 weeks ago when staff dug into that. And they said, oh, by the way, do you know this fun fact about the doubling of the money that the governor can move?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Republican staff should have been digging into that before you had to ask for it. Because that's a huge deal. Okay, I want to get to something else because we have this controversial gun ban law and gun registry, and it's not going well, is it?
Well, absolutely not. We're 2 months into the gun ban. It started October 1st. It's supposed to be everybody that has these weapons and parts. There's an 85-page document that ISP puts out, pictures and descriptions of all these things that I guess you and I as law-abiding owners have time to go through 85-page document to see if anything fits in or out of this category. They're at less than 0.25% compliance 60 days into this. 1 month yet to go. So at this rate, Jeannie, this is going to take 83 years to get everybody in compliance.
Or people just aren't going to register their guns.
They're not going to register.
They're not going to register. And first of all, a lot of them are just going to assume it's a commonly used weapon. It's definitely not on that list. I'm not even looking. And I bet you, just as there's a lot of folks that are unaware of what happens in any public body, how many of the 2.4 million FOID owners do you think even know that there's a gun registry?
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's pretty widely known, but I think why is it our responsibility to carry out a constitutional right that we have to check a list that's 85 pages long to know whether we have firearms that may or may not be on that list? And then it was brought up in the discussion during the hearings about certain hand grips that can be used on airsoft guns. Okay, so
on an airsoft gun?
Yeah, certain grips, certain handles. Do they have to, so here's you've got
good grief.
Okay, so where does this end? And this is where we find ourselves at. Illinois State Police had 3 hearings here about a month ago. We talked about it on the House floor. We asked these questions. We're under emergency rules that was dropped in at the last minute, effective immediately, 150 days. The permanent rules are not going to be permanent until after the January 1st deadline comes and goes. JCAR meets again here in December, but they told us, the attorney for ISP told us back at the first hearing that it may be into January, the January JCAR meeting.
First of all, this entire bill was all, again, pandering to their base about, restricting gun rights of legal gun owners and not actually going after the criminals who have the guns. And they don't care about your laws. I'm telling the gangbangers on the west and south side or throughout the city, or I don't care, in Champaign, Decatur, you name it, Peoria, you name your big cities where we have these problems, and they're everywhere.
Right.
They're not registering their guns. And they don't have FOID cards either, so they're illegal from the get-go. They don't care. So this was pandering through the base. And they knew. I mean, Don Harmon actually said, go ahead and sue over this law if you don't like it. When they actually voted on the law during the debate, he said, go ahead and sue. Because this is what they say. This is what the Democrats want to do. They will take your rights away and force you to sue to get them back. That is their mantra in the state of Illinois. That's how they feel about this.
They're going to starve us out. That's what they're going to do. And they're just going to say, look, we show up in court and we'll debate it there, and they'll run you out of money and run you out of time. And it's all by design.
It's all by design. This is exactly what they designed to do. You don't live in a free state.
Right.
In the state of Illinois. You don't. So many of your freedoms have been eroded. But there is a little bit of good news. So the Center Square reported that the U.S. Supreme Court docketed another challenge to Illinois' gun ban. So this is the second docketed case in
Right.
2 weeks. First was Dan Calkins' case, got docketed a couple weeks ago. And then on November 29th, the Naperville gun case that challenged both Naperville's and Illinois' gun law ban was placed on the docket at the High Court. Now, in the Naperville case, Justice Amy Coney Barrett ordered that the state responds to the plaintiff's motion by December 6th. So they're taking both of these cases seriously. And then I believe that in Calkins' case will probably get amended because new information was brought out. So in Calkins' case, part of their arguments were that the two Supreme Court justices that received a lot of money during their campaign, to
Hundreds of thousands,
millions of dollars from folks,
the governor,
people that had been defendants in these lawsuits, that they should have recused themselves from these controversial gun law cases. And they didn't. They refused to. And then new information came out saying that these two justices were supported by a PAC called All for Justice that was ran by a guy named Luke Casson. And he actually is counsel to the Senate President, Don Harmon. And he raised well over $7 million in this All for Justice independent expenditure PAC, and then failed to file the reports on time. And it was just reported this week that committee that he ran now has one of the largest fines at the Illinois State Board of Elections ever in the history. One of the largest, nearly $100,000. Now, this gets really complicated, because in 2020, when they were able to get Democrat Judge Kilbride out, the Democrats put in this new legislation that essentially tried to cap outside expenditures from outside entities outside the state and limited things to $500,000 inside the state expenditures. Well, that also was going. There was an injunction on that because that was obviously unconstitutional. But regardless, the Democrats gerrymandered the districts, put in these campaign caps, and then blew through the caps anyway and failed to report in time. Both Rochford and who got like $8.8 million, and I think O'Brien got like $6.8 million. They both way outspent their opponents, and they just smeared their opponents too, by the way. And they also took $125,000 from another group that the PAC did, the All for Justice PAC, that gave the money then to the justices for their campaigns. It was a gun ban group. So I mean, they're sitting up there, and meanwhile, this guy who gave them all the money is, lined up as one of the lawyers for one of the defendants. What the hell?
It's like you can't make this stuff up. I hate to say that.
Seriously, what the hell?
I mean, it's all scripted out. Yeah, and so the law-abiding gun owner doesn't stand a chance against this bunch, and they're going to try to make criminals out of them. When these people running these campaigns, running these PACs, these judges, they're the criminals in this mess.
Sure looks that way. It's the old adage, you may bring your lawyers, they bring their judges. That's what it feels like in the state of Illinois. But, I mean, they take millions of dollars. I mean, Pritzker himself skirted his own $500,000 cap by giving $500,000 from his own campaign account and then $500,000 from his, company. So $1 million each. All right, that's all we got time for. Brad Hallbrick, 107th State Rep District. Thank you for joining me tonight on The Real Story. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Talk to you later.
Okay.